There lived a girl called Vivian in the busy city of Lagos. She was young, beautiful, and kind. Even though she didn't go far in school, she worked hard every day and never complained. Vivian was a salesgirl in a big supermarket. From morning till evening, she stood on her feet arranging goods, smiling at customers, and helping her boss. She didn't have much, but her heart was full of love. Everyone around her liked her. The children on her street always ran to greet her. "Good morning, Auntie Vivian," they would shout, happy to see her. "Good morning, my sweethearts," she would reply, giving them warm smiles and sometimes even small biscuits from her bag. Vivian didn't care that she didn't have fine clothes or big money. What mattered to her was doing good. If someone was sad, she would sit and listen. If someone was hungry, she would share her food, even if it was just one wrap of rice. But deep in her heart, Vivian was missing someone. Mike, her boyfriend. Mike lived far away, in Enugu, a quiet place with trees, red soil, and slow life. Mike had finished his secondary school exams, but there was no money to go further. He lives with his parents and helped out on the farm when he could. Sometimes he did small jobs for people, just to buy food, because he's big enough to feed himself. Vivian and Mike had grown up together in the village. They used to walk to the stream holding hands, laugh under the mango tree, and chase butterflies in the evening. They were more than just friends. They were each other's world. Now, being far apart made Vivian sad. She worked in the city, ate alone, and came back to an empty room every night. Her heart ached for Mike. One evening, she came back from work, tired and dusty. She sat on her soft foam mattress and stared at her phone for a while. She missed him. Then she took a deep breath and called him. "Hello, Mike," she said, her voice soft like a whisper. "Vivian," he replied. "I've missed your voice." "I miss you every day," she said. Her eyes filled with small tears, but she wiped them quickly. Then she said gently, "Mike, I've been thinking. You've been in the village too long. Things are not working for you there. You're not going to school. You're not making money. And it hurts me. I want to help you." Mike was quiet. He didn't say a word. "I live alone here in Lagos," she continued. "The room is small, but it's enough for both of us. Please come and stay with me. You can look for a job here." Mike sighed. "Vivian, I don't know. I don't want people to say I'm living off a woman. I don't want to feel weak." Vivian's heart broke a little. She understood. She knew he was proud. "But Mike," she said gently, "love is not about who gives more. If you were in my shoe, you would help me too. This is our journey. Let me help you now, so you can stand later." Mike was silent for a long time. "Let me think about it," he finally said. "Okay," Vivian whispered. "I'll wait." Days passed. Vivian went to work and came back hoping for his call. Her heart beat fast whenever her phone rang. She prayed every night for him to say yes. Then one evening, while cooking small jollof rice, her phone rang. It was Mike. "Hello?" she said quickly. "Vivian," he said slowly. "I've made up my mind. I'll come to Lagos." She dropped her spoon and shouted, "Thank you, Jesus." She was so happy she started crying and laughing at the same time. "I'll send you transport money tomorrow morning. Please pack your bag," she said with joy. The next day, she sent the money. That weekend, Mike entered a long bus and traveled to Lagos. When she saw him at the park, tears filled her eyes. He looked tired and thin, but he was still her Mike. She ran to him and hugged him tightly. "Welcome to Lagos," she whispered. "Thank you," he replied with a tired smile. As they walked together, hand in hand, down the noisy streets of Lagos, Vivian felt peace in her heart. She didn't know what the future would bring, but she believed that with love and patience, they would find their way. When Mike arrived at Vivian's house, he looked around in surprise. His eyes moved from the soft curtain to the neatly spread bed, then to the tiny but tidy kitchen at the corner of the room. He turned to her and smiled. "But Vivian," he said, looking amazed. "You told me this place was small, but it looks really beautiful. Thank you so much. I won't take this for granted." Vivian's face lit up with joy. She had worked so hard to make that room look nice. Even though it wasn't big, she made sure it was clean, bright, and welcoming. There was a little rug on the floor, a plastic flower on her table, and posters on the wall with kind words like "hard work pays" and "love lives here." "I'm happy you like it," she said, walking toward the kitchen. "Sit down. Let me serve you something. I cooked your favorite." Mike smiled as he sat down on the edge of the bed, watching her with love in his eyes. He still couldn't believe he was finally in Lagos, sitting in the same room with Vivian after all those lonely months in the village. Vivian opened her small pot, and the sweet smell of jollof rice filled the room. She dished the food onto a plate, added fried plantain, and brought it to him with a cold sachet water. "Wow," Mike said as he took the plate. "This looks and smells so good, just like old times." He took a big spoonful and nodded with a happy sigh. Vivian, you're the best cook in the whole world." Vivian laughed, folding her arms and leaning against the wall. "I've had enough practice. Living alone makes you learn fast." They both laughed. It felt like the old days again, like when they used to sit under the tree beside Vivian's parents' house, talking about their dreams. Mike had always loved school. He was the type of boy who enjoyed reading books and asking questions. Even back in secondary school, his classmates called him Professor Mike. He dreamed of becoming a lawyer someday. He always said he wanted to stand in court and fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. Vivian remembered those dreams clearly. They had finished secondary school the same year. Vivian had passed her exams, but her parents sat her down one evening and told her they didn't have money to send her to university. "My daughter," her father had said, "we know you're smart, but we can't afford higher education now. Please understand." Vivian didn't argue. That night, after crying quietly into her pillow, she made a decision. She would go to the city and look for work. She would make something out of her life, even if it meant starting small. And she did. Not long after arriving in Lagos, she got the job at the supermarket. She worked hard, earned money, and started sending money home to help her family. Sometimes she even sent small amounts to Mike, especially when he called to say he was hungry or needed to buy something for school. Mike had hope back then because his uncle, who lived abroad, promised to sponsor him. He was so excited. He used to say, "My uncle will send for me soon. I'll go to school. Then I'll take care of everyone." But after they finished school, things changed. The uncle stopped picking his calls. No texts, no explanations, just silence. Mike became sad. Days turned into weeks, and the weeks into years. His dreams of becoming a lawyer started to fade. Now, sitting in Vivian's room and eating her food, those dreams came alive again. Vivian looked at him with care in her eyes. "Mike," she said gently, "now that you're here, I want you to know something." He looked up from his plate. "I'll do everything I can to make sure you go back to school," she said, her voice firm and full of love. "I want to see you wear that lawyer's gown. I want you to make me proud." Mike swallowed hard. Her words touched his heart. No one had ever believed in him the way she did. "Vivian," he said, almost whispering, "you're an angel. I don't know what I did to deserve you." She sat beside him and held his hand. "You don't have to do anything. I love you. And that's enough." That night, as they sat side by side, talking about the future, hope filled the tiny room. The city outside was noisy, but inside, everything was calm. Vivian had given Mike more than just a place to stay. She had given him another chance. After staying in Lagos for a few months, things didn't go the way Mike and Vivian had hoped. Every morning, Mike would dress up neatly and go out to look for work. He walked under the hot sun, knocked on doors, and asked people if they needed help. He tried shops, supermarkets, even small kiosks, but nobody wanted to hire him. Each time he came back home, his face looked tired and sad. "There's still nothing," he would say in a quiet voice. Vivian always welcomed him with a smile. She never shouted, never got angry. Instead, she would say, "Don't worry, Mike. It will get better." But inside, Mike felt bad. He didn't like the way things were going. He felt like a burden, like someone who was just eating and sleeping while Vivian did all the work. Sometimes he sat by the window, staring outside with tears in his eyes, wondering when things would change. But Vivian didn't see him that way. She loved him deeply. Every morning, before going to work, she would cook a hot meal for Mike. Sometimes it was yam and egg, sometimes jollof rice. She would leave it on the table and whisper before leaving, "Eat well, my love." When she came back in the evening, tired from standing all day, she would still smile and hug him. She often brought him small surprises, maybe a meat pie, a soft drink, or a clean shirt from the market. "Mike," she would say, "I saw this and thought of you." No matter how small, she made sure he felt loved. One evening, Vivian returned home and found Mike sitting quietly on the bed. She dropped her bag, changed her clothes, and came to sit beside him. He looked up. "Welcome, Vivian." "Thank you," she said, holding his hand. "How was your day?" "The same," he replied sadly. "Still no job." She nodded and squeezed his hand gently. "Mike, can I talk to you?" He turned to her and said, "Of course." Vivian took a deep breath. "You know, I also love school. When I finished secondary school, my biggest dream was to go to the university. I wanted to be the first graduate in my family. I promised myself and my parents that I would make them proud. So I started saving small by small." Mike listened, not saying a word. "But," she continued, "things are hard now. You've been trying to find work, but nothing is working. I've been thinking a lot, and I've made a decision." Mike looked worried. "What is it?" Vivian smiled gently. "I want you to go back to school." His eyes widened. "I will sponsor you," she said slowly. "I've already been saving for school anyway. And since we are going to get married one day, your success is also my joy. Let me help you now." Mike didn't speak. He stared at her in shock. Then slowly, his eyes filled with tears. He looked down, then back at her. "Vivian," he whispered, "you're giving up your dream for me?" Vivian touched his cheek. "It's not giving up. It's sharing. Your dream is also mine." Mike hugged her tightly. He couldn't hold back the tears. "Thank you," he said over and over again. "I promise. I won't let you down." Vivian felt peace in her heart. She had never seen him that happy in a long time. That night, Mike went to bed smiling. He held Vivian's hand and whispered, "You are my angel." Vivian smiled too. She was glad to see joy in his eyes again. A few days later, Vivian used part of her savings to buy a jam form for Mike. He started reading seriously, sometimes even staying up late at night with a small lamp. Vivian would bring him water and encourage him. "Read well, my love. God will help you." When the results came out, Mike passed. He jumped with joy and hugged Vivian tightly. "God did it!" he shouted. "I passed." Vivian danced around the room. "I told you. You're smart, Mike. I'm so proud of you." Mike chose Lagos State University as his school, and months later, the admission list came out. He was accepted. He didn't get law, the course he had always dreamed of, but he didn't complain. He held the admission letter and said, "As long as I'm in school, I'll make the best out of it." Vivian was so proud of him. She told everyone at work, "My husband-to-be is going to university." Mike looked better now. He smiled more, walked with confidence, and didn't look hungry anymore. His eyes were full of hope. A few days before he left for campus, Vivian went to the market and bought him 2 new shirts, trousers, and a pair of sandals. When she gave them to him, Mike's face lit up with joy. "Thank you, Vivian," he said, then leaned forward and kissed her forehead gently. Life in the university was exciting, but also very challenging for Mike. There were so many things to do: morning lectures, long notes to copy, tests to write, and exams to prepare for. Sometimes he had to read late into the night, and other times he had to rush to class without breakfast. But through it all, One thing gave him strength: Vivian. Even though she was not there with him every day, Mike felt her love and support like the air he breathed. Vivian didn't just send money. She came in person with foodstuffs and other things he needed. Each time she visited him on campus, she brought bags filled with rice, curry, yam, milk, noodles, and even soap and toothpaste. "Mike," she would say, smiling as she handed him the items, "I want to make sure you don't lack anything." And he didn't. Sometimes when he opened his cupboard and saw all the things she brought, his heart would swell with joy. He would whisper, "Thank you, Vivian. You're truly a blessing." Mike worked very hard in school. He didn't want to disappoint her, not after all she had done. He attended all his classes, read his books carefully, and ask questions when he didn't understand. During exams, he would say a short prayer and remember Vivian's words, "Just do your best. I believe in you." And truly, he did his best. Mike passed all his courses. There was no carryover, no resit. When his results came out, he would call Vivian with excitement in his voice. "Guess what, baby?" he would say. "You passed again?" Vivian would laugh, already knowing the answer. "Yes, no failed course." He would shout, dancing around his room. "I'm so proud of you, Mike. Keep it up," she would say, her voice full of pride. Back in Lagos, Vivian was not just waiting. She had a plan too. She didn't want to work as a salesgirl forever. So, while Mike was busy in school, she was also thinking about her future. For many months, she saved part of her salary. Even when it was hard, she still kept something aside. Sometimes, she would skip buying clothes for herself just to grow her savings. "Sacrifice today for a better tomorrow," she often told herself. And when the time was right, she made a bold move. Vivian resigned from her job at the supermarket. Her boss was surprised. "Vivian, why do you want to leave? You're one of my best workers," he said. Vivian smiled. "Thank you, sir, but I want to start my own small business." He nodded with respect. "I believe in you. You're hardworking. You will do well." With the money she had saved, Vivian rented a small shop not far from her street. She painted it, cleaned it, and arranged wooden shelves neatly on the walls. Then she filled the shop with provisions, things like biscuits, soap, milk, sugar, and drinks. She opened the shop with a small celebration. Some of her neighbors came to support her. "Vivian, this shop is nice," one woman said. "Your things are neat and well arranged," another added. Vivian smiled and thanked them. Her heart was full of happiness. Even though the shop was small, it was hers. She was her own boss now. And the best part? She was doing all of this while supporting the man she loved. Every time Mike called and told her about school, she would sit on her plastic chair inside the shop and smile. "God, thank you," she would whisper. This is just the beginning. Mike was now in his final year at the university. Time had gone by so fast. Through it all, Vivian never stopped taking care of him. She paid all his school fees, fed him, clothed him, and made sure he never lacked anything. She stood by him through thick and thin. Mike was happy. He had changed so much. He looked fresh, smart, and full of life. He now walked and talked like a big boy. People who saw him would never believe that not long ago. He was just a village boy with nothing. After his final exams, Mike packed his things and returned home. His heart was full of joy. He couldn't wait to hug Vivian and tell her how grateful he was. When he reached her door, he knocked with a smile on his face. "Vivian," he called. No one answered. He knocked again, but the room stayed quiet. He took out his phone and called her. "Hello, Vivian. I'm at the door," he said. Vivian's voice came from the other end, a little breathless. "You're back already? I'm on my way," she replied quickly. What Mike didn't know was that Vivian had been at her shop. She now ran her own small provision store, but she didn't want to tell Mike yet. She wanted to surprise him later in the evening. So, she quickly closed the shop and ran home, carrying a nylon bag with snacks for him. When she reached home and saw Mike standing there, her face broke into a big smile. She dropped everything and ran into his arms. "Welcome home, my love," she said, holding him tight. Mike hugged her back. Thank you, Vivian. I'm done with school. I'm so proud of you, she said with joy in her eyes. Vivian went into the kitchen and prepared a meal for him. She made one of his favorite dishes, white rice and red stew with pieces of fried meat. The smell filled the whole room. Mike sat down and ate happily. This food is sweet, he said. Vivian smiled and watched him eat, her heart full. When he finished eating, he cleaned his mouth and looked at her. He took her hands in his and said, Vivian, thank you for everything. You've changed my life. If not for you, I wouldn't be where I am today. Vivian's eyes filled with emotion. She didn't say a word. She just nodded and smiled. I will never forget what you've done for me, he added. You gave me hope when I had nothing. You believed in me when others didn't. Vivian held his hands tighter. That's what love is about, she said softly. Later that evening, Vivian was ready to tell Mike the good news, that she had opened her own shop and was now her own boss. She felt it was the perfect time to share it with him. She went into the room to talk to him, but he wasn't there. She looked in the kitchen. He wasn't there either. She checked outside the door. Still no sign of him. She felt a bit worried, so she stepped outside and walked quietly to the back of the house. That was when she heard his voice. Mike was on the phone, laughing and talking sweetly. Vivian paused and asked, Who is the person you are on the phone with? He was scared at first, but quickly said, Don't worry, babe. I'll call you back soon. My sister needs my attention. Vivian's heart dropped. She stepped closer and said, Mike, who are you talking to? Mike turned around quickly. He looked shocked to see her. Just a friend, he said nervously. Vivian stared at him. You called her babe, and you said I'm your sister? Mike looked at her for a moment, then smiled in a strange way. You really want to know? Vivian nodded slowly. Mike took a deep breath and said coldly, You think I'll be with someone as naive as you? I have no feelings for you anymore. Vivian froze. He stepped closer and added, For everything you have done for me, I'm saying thank you. And don't worry, I'll repay you. What Mike said broke Vivian's heart into pieces. She couldn't hold back the pain anymore. She turned and rushed inside the house, her hands covering her face. Mike followed behind her slowly. Vivian fell on the bed and let out a loud, painful cry. Her chest hurt badly, and tears rolled down her cheeks. Is this how you are going to repay me? She cried out, her voice shaking. After everything I have done for you, after all the sacrifices I made? Mike stood by the door, arms crossed, watching her without a bit of pity. I gave up my dream of becoming a graduate just for you. Vivian continued, sobbing harder. I worked day and night so you could stand tall. I loved you with everything inside me. And now, you call me your sister? Mike sighed and said coldly, Vivian, I didn't force you to sponsor me. You chose to do it. I just played along. Who wouldn't want to go to school if someone else was paying? Vivian lifted her head and looked at him, her eyes red with tears. You're so ungrateful, she said, her voice weak but full of pain. Instead of feeling sorry, Mike laughed. He laughed loudly, like he had just heard a funny joke. You made a big mistake, he said, shaking his head. A very big mistake. Never sponsor someone you are not related to. It's just a big financial loss. Vivian's mouth dropped open in shock. She couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. Was this the same Mike she had loved so much? The same boy she had fought so hard for? Just then, Mike's phone rang. He checked the screen and smiled. I'm coming, he said quickly to the caller and ended the call. Without wasting time, he went inside, brought out his traveling box, and dragged it to the sitting room. He opened his bag and pulled out a bundle of money. He threw it on the couch without looking at her. There, he said, take this. I'm leaving. I only came to say hello. Vivian stared at the money but didn't touch it. Mike picked up his box and walked to the door. Oh, and one more thing, he said, opening the door. Please don't call me again. With that, he slammed the door behind him and disappeared from her life. Everything felt like a bad dream to Vivian. She sat there for a long time, staring at the door, hoping he would come back and say it was all a joke. But he didn't. She wanted to cry, but no tears came. Her heart was too broken even for tears. The days passed slowly. Vivian went back to her shop, but her smile was gone. She tried to be strong, but the pain followed her everywhere she went. Months later, one afternoon while scrolling through her small phone, she saw pictures all over the internet. It was Mike's wedding. He had married a rich man's daughter. The pictures showed him smiling happily in a big suit, holding hands with a beautiful woman dressed in gold.
Vivian felt like her heart was being crushed all over again. She turned off her phone and sat quietly for a long time. Tears finally rolled down her cheeks. She remembered everything she had done for Mike. She remembered all the promises, all the nights she prayed for him, all the love she gave without holding back. At that moment, Vivian made a promise to herself. Never again, she whispered. I will always put myself first. I will never lose myself for anyone. She wiped her tears, stood up, and looked around her small shop. Vivian knew she would rise again. She had survived before she met Mike, and she would survive after him. She was stronger than she thought. Lesson: always value yourself. Never lose your dreams for someone who does not see your worth. True love supports and respects you. Put yourself first, and never forget your own happiness. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe. Thank you.